Hello. Today I'm going to tie for you a Hellgrammite Mop Fly. It's a smallmouth bass fly, at least here in western Pennsylvania, and I've tied at least 20 versions of these and a few more since mop flies became popular. Now here's a look at the real thing, and bass kind of love them. I do this on a short shanked hook. Now this one wasn't in a package, so I can't tell you exactly what model that is, but you can guess. It's probably about a size 4. So there we had the gray mop that I found in one of the discount stores and a single strand of it that I've prepared. I'm going to use multi-strand embroidery floss as legs. I'm going to use scalp and wool, but you could use dubbing or yarn. And we're going to add a couple of biots for the horns on the thing, a section of goose quill for a wing case or a shell back. Going to hold it all together with 3/0 Superfly in black. And there's that hook in the vise, and we can get started. I tried to do a little research and see exactly what hook that was. Like I said, they were loose in a container and the label was missing, but I think it's about a size 4. Could be a little bigger since I am targeting bass, um, but it gets the job done. And I like that the straight eye on these too. I like more and more. I like straight eyes on hooks. So here we have, I peeled back a little bit of that piece of mop and exposed the core, and it's 4 strands, and I wrapped it down, and we're going to add a little super glue there. We don't want that to pull loose. There's not a lot holding it in, and I think, to be honest, if the bass chew these up, you're having a good day. You probably don't mind sacrificing one or two to the fish. So I have a strand of that sculpin wool. And again, I was digging through old materials, so this may not have been my first choice if I was just building this fly from scratch, but I'm trying to use up stuff that's been laying around here forever and still make a good fly and catch fish with them. So now here I'm going to try and build a little bulk underneath. Ultimately, I'm going to do dubbing on here, but I was just looking for a fast way to kind of put a layer or two of something underneath. And this wasn't it. If I had to do it again, I would have rethought this, but I left it in. There again, I'm not trying to make the perfect video, maybe not even the perfect fly, but just trying to blend some good ideas and stuff I have and show you a little bit of how I experiment. And that's part of the fun of it for me as well. So I did eventually get a layer of that there. Like I said, had that been yarn, I started in the back and went forward and back or something, that might have been a better deal. And we'll trim it off. The stubs won't hurt being there. They kind of bridge the gap. But I have thread wraps just in front of that mop, and I want to cover them up and begin the dubbing process. And dubbing's always the slow, boring part, and this is where you guys click ahead and say, okay, let's see how he finishes, and off to the next video. So I get it, I do it too. So I've got a little ball of that sculpin, and I just snipped it to, I don't know, about a ½ inch in length and used it for dubbing. So that's about the right place to tie in that shell back. So there I was showing you that's a section of goose quill. It's roughly the gap of the hook in width, and I'm just being careful to kind of get it tied down without folding it or wrinkling it, and center it on top of the hook. And this is where I don't think you want to tie straight to a bare hook or a small diameter, because it kind of folds up a lot easier, and I fight it a lot more when I do that. So we snipped off the excess and back to dubbing. So like I said, I took a chunk of that sculpin wool and just snipped it about every ½ inch or so and did a little finger mix and started to use it for dubbing. It's not perfect, but all we're looking for here is bulk and something that's kind of scrubby and I think picky, if you like that term. I'm going to add some dubbing here and keep building up a little ball. I think if you get those fibers, they're pretty thick and sturdy fibers. If you get them angled across the thread and twist them, I think that's about ideal. That's what you're trying for here. That'll at least hold them in, and then they'll still brush out a little bit. Yeah, I've been using these flies in streams. I've done a couple versions of this. I've taken mops. I've laid a single strand of that mop on um, I guess a flame retardant surface. I'll hold a fork across the top of it. Some of you have seen this already. I've released it, and I don't know if I did it as a video, but it was pictures in a sequence. And I'll kind of aim the little, it's a cigar lighter actually, a little torch. I'll aim that at the fork across the top of that mop, and it kind of singes segments into it. And it makes a decent looking fly. And then I've been always looking for a way to add legs or to give it some shape and character that was relatively easy and inexpensive. And so this fly here, this is kind of what I came up with. And there's some magic I didn't show us up front here, but I'll talk about in a second when we get that far. So there we go. I think that ball up front could have been a little bigger, but I was getting anxious and wanted to move on and get an actual fly done here. So we're going to tie a biot in on each side. And the actual mandibles, I guess they are on the bug itself. They're not this long, but they leaving them a little longer, I think, just adds some shape and it doesn't seem to hurt. So we'll snip off the excess. I debated there for a minute about leaving that excess in there. It would just look like front legs. And we'll fold that quill section over the top. I'm right behind the eye, and I'm going to wrap back a little bit, give myself a little room, and fold that quill back and trap it down. And I snip off the excess pretty close. Just a note here, that quill was tied in by the tip. I have more luck and less wrinkle, fewer wrinkles when I tie it in by the tip and fold it over. So sorry about bumping the camera. Yeah, let's get a good 5 or 6 turn whip finish there. And I've fished these flies this way, and I've trimmed the back end to a point, fooled around with these, and these will catch fish too. There's nothing wrong with like stopping here, but and I'm going to use UV here because to kind of harden up that shell back. Mostly because I want to get this thing done. I don't want to sit and wait for lacquer to dry. So it looks good, and if you're not sensitive to it and you're into the UV thing, this isn't a bad place and bad way to use it. I have some squeezed out on a post-it note, and I'm picking it up with the bodkin and just kind of working it across the top. This stuff is a tongue twister. It was called Clear Cure Goo. Um, I've since used mostly Loon products, but I'm trying to use this stuff up. I've had a bottle of it for years, and there's still some left. So let's do one last little trip around the front there, cover up the thread. And that fiber with a little glue on it kind of laid down and smoothed in with the rest of it. And it's Time to hit it with the flashlight. So you guys could probably click ahead about 10 seconds. I think I normally go about 10 or 15 seconds on this stuff to make sure it's set up. That's a Loon bench light. It's not the rechargeable model, so as the batteries get weak, it takes a little longer. But there we are. Now here's the cool part of the fly. I'm going to turn it around the vise so I have access to that mop. So it is articulated. There'll be a little movement there. That's kind of a cool thing. And I have a piece of that embroidery floss. It's cut off about 2.5 inches. I just did a double overhand knot. I don't know if double's better than single. I'm going to put all the legs on and then come back. And I didn't want them to kind of relax and come loose while I was adding more legs. So first set is in. I kind of settled on 4 sets as looking pretty good to me. Alright, it's starting to look buggy. This technique may have another application too. I just kind of invented it for this purpose, but I can see dragonfly nymphs, damselfly nymphs, maybe even smaller nymphs. I'm not sure where all and how all. And again, some of it's for fun, and some of it might actually build a fly that's more enticing. Alright, so we'll get that last piece kind of tied in, leave a little stub for a tail there, and fan these out. Now you're thinking, okay, now what's going to keep those from slipping off, right? So I played with a little UV, I played with head cement to glue those in, but I found a bottle of Tear Mender, and I watched somebody use that on flies. They were adding it to stack feathers, and I bought a bottle one time, and I hadn't used it. So I found it on my bench, and I started fooling around with it, and I'm going to add a drop on top of each one of those knots. And it kind of soaks in. And then when I first did this, I looked at that. It was this white gooey stuff, and it's going to be kind of ugly. Maybe I can darken it with a marker, make it look black or brown. But as it dried, and you'll see at the end, I have a tie that or a fly that I had tied earlier. Um, when it dries, it kind of turns I don't know, pasty brown color and almost looks like the natural to some degree. So I'm just making sure I get a couple of drops in each location, and probably taking extra time on this than more time than I needed to. Okay, so that's probably pretty well coated. It's a rubbery substance, it's kind of like a rubber cement. It's supposed to dry in a couple of minutes, and you can throw it in a washing machine within 15 minutes. It said it's made for fixing clothing. I think it's going to work good for this. And then I'm just going to snip those stubs of embroidery thread off at some reasonable length that looks like legs or those spiky things that come out the side of these bugs. And I think they're going to add a little movement in the water. And I don't know. The other versions of this bug work pretty well. Caught a few fish on them. And I like the dead drift these in smallmouth rivers. I think this one has potential. Haven't fished it yet with these legs, but so we'll turn around. There's little Velcro on the end. That's a handle from a pair of tweezers. So I added a piece of Velcro just for a thin way to reach in there between the hook and rough out some fibers. And we'll do a slow look around. And there we have, if you take a close look at the bottom one, it's already dried and it's kind of turned that gooey brown like the real thing. So hope you tie some of these, catch some fish. If you hung in there till the end and want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. And until next time, be safe.